If you ever bring up Neopets in general conversation to a millennial, it will usually go something like this. Oh my god, I haven't fed my pets in forever, they're probably dead. I still miss playing Neopets. I was a pretty big deal, I had a baby paintbrush. And this is why I don't really reminisce about Neopets with other people my age, because, let's face it, y'all were Neopets casuals. I'm mostly joking, I would never judge someone for how seriously they play a game, especially a game like Neopets, but like my experience was just on a very different level than your average Neopian. I just can't really relate to those general nostalgia conversations, and that is because I played Neopets in college. Yes, in college. And I was not the only one. There is a whole community of grown-ass adults playing Neopets religiously. There's even a Neopets black market where people buy and sell valuable pets and items for real money. I was reminded of all of this when I saw a viral Twitter thread from someone who used to be a preteen Neopets scammer, which is just extra horrifying because I am gonna tell you the story of a scam today, and knowing that it might have been pulled off by like a 12-year-old or something just makes me want to die. The saddest part about the preteen scammer story is just that it goes to show that there were literal children out there being ruthless and smart, and then there were literal adults, like me, working my ass off to rightfully earn fictional pixel currency to buy fictional pixel items. Oh my god, it is so embarrassing. So hold on to your butts, because today I want to take you deep into the dark underbelly of what it is to be an adult Neopets player. So I haven't played Neopets in many years now, so some of what I say may be a little out of date, but this is just kind of a window into the world that I played in. So of course I played Neopets in elementary school like everyone did, but I came back to the game in college, and I honestly don't remember why. But I got sucked in, and then for years, I dedicated a huge chunk of my free time to the game. I had backstories and complex characters for all of my pets. I drew so much art, I entered them in the beauty contest to win trophies for their pet lookups. They all had custom HTML pet pages that I coded myself from scratch. Yes, I learned HTML for Neopets. I even ran an art contest called Neopia's Next Top Model. It was very popular. We had multiple cycles. So Neopets is a big site. There are a lot of different things you can do, a lot of different ways you can play, especially if you're an adult player. For instance, you could be an avatar collector. You could run a big, fully stocked shop. You could be a member or a leader of an active guild. You could focus on the games, try to win high scores and trophies. Artists mostly hung out in the beauty contest chat, which is a weekly art contest determined by popular vote. I spent a lot of time there. One of the ways you could play the game was focusing on pet value, like getting the most valuable or coolest or rarest pets. There was an entire sub-forum of the Neopets chat boards for people who are trying to pursue specific pets. It was called the Pound Chat, or the PC. Just like any niche community, there is an internal language, certain terms and abbreviations that everyone knows and uses. If you were a PC user, there was a whole set of terms used as shorthand to indicate a pet's value. A lot of that language was centered around names, and this is because on Neopets, every single pet name is unique. So if your pet is named George 467, then there can be a George 466 and a George 468, but your pet is the only pet on the entire site that can be called George 467. This, of course, means that the vast majority of pets have a really sort of cliched online username format, like names with numbers after them, or names with extra letters thrown in, or names with underscores or X's around it, especially considering that Neopets was launched in 1999, so of course, all the most basic names have been claimed for a long time. We won't talk about the purge, that's another video. Limited supply means increased value, so the quality of a pet's name became a huge part of how a pet's value was determined. For example, if you saw a pet that was RW, that means real word. It means the name of the pet was an actual word that is in the dictionary. So an RW pet might be like coffee. Ah yes, Coffee the Aisha. Similarly, there's RN, which stands for real name, like a pet named Catherine. A pet also might be considered WN or VWN, which stands for well-named or very well-named, and of course there was some debate about where the line was between those two, but in general, a short, pronounceable name with a capitalized first letter was considered VWN. So a name like this might be considered well-named, WN, but a name like this might be considered VWN. Very well named. And of course there were paintbrushes. Holy shit, there is just so much to explain if you haven't played Neopets. When you create a pet, it can be one of 4 colors: red, blue, yellow, and green. And if you want your pet to be a different color, you can purchase an item called a paintbrush. A paintbrush is a single-use item that will permanently change your pet's color and design. So if you paint a red shoiru with a fairy paintbrush, it will become a fairy shoiru. Some paintbrushes are very affordable, like Christmas, which goes for about 50k Neopoints, or Checkered, which goes for 72k, but other paintbrushes are really expensive, like Fairy, which goes for 2.4 million, or Moroccan, which goes for 4.3 million. So if you're in the PC trying to trade pets, all of this stuff would become relevant. The quality of the name, the value of the paint job, etc. The most valuable kind of pet that you could get on Neopets was what was referred to as a UC, which stands for unconverted. I'm gonna try to make this as quick and easy as possible. Basically, many years ago, the pet artwork looked different than it looks now, but in 2007, Neopets as a company decided that they wanted to start offering wearable clothing items for pets, at least partially because they were trying to push their real money digital currency, Neocash. They would sell digital clothing items, users would buy them, and then they could put those clothes on their pets like a little dress-up game. In order to do that, they needed to standardize the bodies of all of the pets in the artwork so that whether you had a blue poodle or a zombie poodle or a gray poodle, all of the same clothes would all fit. That way they wouldn't have to draw different clothes for every different color of every different kind of pet. This is a decision that makes a lot of sense, by the way. There are 70 different paintbrush colors, including the 4 basic ones, and 55 different species. So you can see how drawing customized clothing for each of those combinations would get out of hand very, very quickly. So instead, they redid the line work for all of the pets, and a lot of the pet colors looked the same anyway. A red poogle and a blue poogle already looked basically the same. But there were some paintbrush colors that included changes to the actual line art, not just the color palette. For example, Royal Girl and Royal Boy pets were often drawn standing on their hind legs and posing to look more regal. Plushy pets were drawn in floppy poses like a toy. Gray pets were often drawn hanging their heads or with their ears or tails drooping. And when Neopets standardized the artwork, a lot of these particularly unique paintbrush colors became really boring and sort of normal looking, so a lot of users were unhappy about it. So when Neopets announced this, they gave players the option of whether or not they wanted to convert their pet to the new artwork. If you did convert your pet, then you could use the clothes, but if you didn't convert your pet, they remained unconverted, or UC, and they kept the old artwork. I think that if Neopets had realized how valuable these pets were going to become over time, they probably would not have done this, because at this point right now in 2020, I can only imagine the value of an unconverted pet is unmatched. When I was playing, there were still things that you could trade up for a UC, but these days, there really can't be that many left, and anyone who has them is probably hanging on to them. Anyway, the point of all of this is that it's common on Neopets to have a dream pet or a few dream pets, dreamies, and maybe they're out of reach, but you'd like to try and get them eventually. And for me, my dream UC pet was a Royal Girl Kiri. This was a type of pet that was particularly rare because it was very in demand. So I'm browsing the pound chat one day and I come across this beautiful VWN UCRG Kiri. Seems like she may be trying to communicate with us. And she was up for adoption, which is wild. Having a UC up for adoption at all is crazy because they have such a high value, you could trade them for literally anything you wanted. So the only real reason to adopt one out for free is if you're leaving the site. And if you're a serious enough player that you've managed to obtain an unconverted pet, like, you don't leave the site very easily. I need to explain apps to you. So there was a time, that time has passed because Neopets ended up banning adoptions with applications because it got that out of hand. But there was a time when people would try to adopt out their valuable pets to the best possible home, the person who most deserved this cluster of pixels. Unlike a trade, an adoption meant that you were going to give someone your pet and expect nothing in exchange. I imagine it probably started pretty low-key. You know, like, oh, just tell me why you want this pet and I'll pick based on who I think is gonna be the best owner. And people would write a paragraph, or they'd write a few paragraphs, or maybe they'd write a little more than they could fit into the character limited Neopets forums post, and they would say, oh, I'm just gonna toss this text on a pet page. And then they would put it up on their pet's website, you know, maybe a few paragraphs, maybe a few thousand words, maybe they would write a whole story, maybe they would draw a picture to be like, oh, this is what she would look like if she were my character, if she were my pet. As I'm sure you can imagine, this mutated quickly, because ultimately it was a competition. You were trying to impress the person who was adopting out their pet more than everyone else, so they would choose you and you would get the pet. This ended up leading to this adoption application culture where people would create these intense, full, multi-page websites for this pet that they didn't even own yet. The more valuable the pet, the more intense these applications got. Sometimes you would see pets go up for adoption with application deadlines that were 2 or 3 months in the future, which virtually guaranteed that unless you spent 2 to 3 months working on that application, you were not going to win. You couldn't compete. So we will call her Leia. That is not her actual name, but that's what I called her based on her name. At the time that I saw Leia up for adoption, we were really at the peak of adoption application culture. I think it was actually really soon after this that applications got banned. I don't think it was related. I think that we had just like hit a critical mass. Anyway, I decided to apply for this Kiri, Leia, and let me tell you, guys, I went ham. I mean, I just didn't have any hobbies or friends or anything. This is pretty much all that I was working on. So I made this absolutely unbelievable pet page application. Like, my concept for Leia was that she's sort of just like a mashup of all of the classic fairy tale princesses. So for my pet page, for instance, I drew this tall stone Rapunzel tower, and I made an infinitely repeating tiling background, and then I had a footer that was the bottom of the tower. I was extremely proud of it. It was some of the most fiddly pet page coding I had ever done. You could click through and it would take you to a completely different page where I had drawn an open storybook, and you could click on the lower corner of the storybook page and it would turn the page and show you the next page of her story. I made adoptables, which was a very common thing with applications. Basically, you would draw the pet and then just adjust the colors and details of the drawing to match every single available paintbrush color for that pet. Basically, I just went nuts. I did everything I could think of. I drew so much art of her. I just went completely overboard. Because that's really what you had to do to win a UC pet in an application process in those days. Like, the competition was extremely stiff. By the time the end date was coming up, people on the PC knew who I was. Like, I would go into, there was a recurring thread called the app chat where people would just talk about their applications that were in progress. I'd go into the app chat and be like, oh, here's my page. And they'd be like, oh my God, you're that person. You made that Leia app. Oh, you're totally gonna get her. It was just like mini level Neopets PC fame. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was confident. Like, I felt pretty certain that I was gonna win her. There were a few other people whose apps I had seen that I thought presented competition to me. Like, I felt like if I didn't win, I knew which 2 or 3 other people she was probably going to go to. So right around the deadline, the owner got like super quiet. I think it made a lot of us nervous because it had been a long application process, like I think about 3 months. The hot goss around the app chat was like, I wonder where Leia's owner is. I wonder when she's gonna get back to people. I wonder what's gonna happen with this. I think most people just assumed that she was having a hard time deciding because fact is, she had probably been delivered like 100 or more pet page applications for this pet. I mean, there was a lot of content. People had been working on these for months. So the next thing we know, the next update we get, Leia has been transferred off of this person's account. Just like, no word, no announcement. And she's on this new owner's page and the little description is like, Leia's found her forever home. Thank you so much. And then you go onto the pet page and there's nothing there, like blank page. And no one recognized the username. No one had seen an application from this person. Everybody on the app chat was like, who the fuck is this? And then the rumors started going around. And the rumors were that Leia had been sold for real money. And when I heard about this, it completely blew my mind. Like, even as an adult, it did not occur to me that somebody would just like shell out cash dollars for a Neopet. Even though, like, as a college student, it's not like I couldn't have probably afforded to do that if I wanted to, but that felt like cheating. Like, what is the point of having these pixels if you didn't earn them? And those are like big scare quotes right there. Once I found out about that, you can Google around to find the places where people are selling Neopets, and they are very cagey about the name of the pet and the name of the account and stuff because nobody actually wants to be connected to this. It's completely against the terms of service. Whether or not she was sold, I feel like there is no dispute that there was definitely foul play of some kind. Like, we all spent months working on these applications, and then she goes to somebody that none of us had ever heard of. That just feels shady. To this day, Leia's pet page remains basically blank. I went and checked it before filming this video. It still hurts. She's had the same beauty contest entry up on her pet page for literal years. And just for context, the beauty contest only runs for 1 week at a time. So that is for sure outdated by now. And listen, like, I don't want to point fingers, you know? I kind of want to point fingers. This account has 11 UC pets total. 11 separate unconverted pets. I mean, you're only allowed to have 4. Actually, I think they updated it 5 pets per account now, but this is a series of linked accounts. You're allowed to have a certain number of side accounts so you can have more pets. There are ways that you could legitimately get 11 UC pets, but it feels like if this person got Leia illegitimately, like, I guess it's possible that this person could have delivered a private application that they never showed to anyone else, and that then after they won the pet, they would have not put even a fragment of that application up on their page, which doesn't make sense to me. But like, okay, I guess, maybe. Doesn't seem likely. Do I have a grudge against this stranger, this online stranger, for snatching these pixels out from under me and other hardworking Neopians? Yes. Absolutely I do. So I don't play Neopets anymore, I don't have time. But I still feel this like uncontrollable visceral urge to have a UC Royal Girl Kiri because I wanted one for so long. So a while ago I actually looked it up to just be like, how much real money are we talking? How much are these actually going for? But ultimately, I didn't want to become the person that I hated when I worked so hard on my application. Like, if I somehow swiped that pet out from under somebody who worked really hard for it, that would be awful. I know it's kind of silly, but like, you can care deeply about pretty much anything if you invest enough time into it, and I invested a lot of time into Neopets. I mean, I don't regret being an adult Neopets player at all. I grew so much as an artist because I was drawing practically every day. I had a lot of fun, I learned to code, I even made lifelong friends. I mean, my friend Sarah, who drew my mini Ginny sticker that's available on my website, like, we've hung out in person a few times. We met on Neopets. I kind of am that asshole anyway, because like, I did end up getting a UC pet, a different UC pet, a UC Grey Kugra, Raya, and she's just like chilling, rotting away on an abandoned account. Maybe I should just go check on her. But the person who bought Leia can suck it. Honestly, I feel like it's surprising that it took me this long to get into D&D because all of my Neopets were like full-on original characters with full backstories, which is basically what I'm doing with my D&D characters now. Did you play Neopets? Please tell me about your experiences, even if they are traumatic like mine was. I logged back into my Sunny Neo account to like fact check some of the information for this video, and some of the new paintbrush colors are cool. But it's fine, I don't need to play Neopets again. That would be a huge waste of time. I'm so busy. That would be really stupid. Why would I do that? I would not do that. I should not do that, right?